Plausible Ways of Falling Short. That's the title of Chapter 5 in David Smith's book, Learning from the Stranger. Plausible ways of falling short relate to limitations and boundaries. These limitations and boundaries are standards, if you will, that we either establish for ourselves or are imposed upon us by others. Limitation and boundaries prevent us from fully engaging in behaviors that create opportunities that allow us to understand those who are culturally different than we are. It also prevents us from developing relationships that help to bridge the gap between understanding cultural differences. Loving our neighbor as ourselves and treating others how we want to be treated acknowledges the need to remove the limitations and the boundaries that prevent us from developing relationships with those who are different than we are. Consider the story from last week, the Levite and the priest who had their limitations and their boundaries that actually prevented them from assisting an individual who was lying on the side of the road at the point of death. The Levite and the priest had no concern about the individual's life. It was the limitations and the boundaries that they set for themselves that prevented them from assisting. Loving God with everything that is within us means that there's a freedom, or there is a sense of freedom in loving all mankind, no matter how culturally different they are than we are. Arrogance and ignorance both reflect limitations and boundaries. Both prevent us from fully engaging in behaviors that help us to not only understand ourselves, but also to understand others. To learn about cultural differences does not require a relationship to be formed. And what I mean by that is we can pick up a book, we can watch a television program that talks about a culture that's different than ours. And in doing so, we don't have to establish a relationship. It's not required. So we are learning about the other culture or the other cultures. But on the flip side, when we are able to learn from individuals that are culturally different than we are, it certainly requires a relationship. So one of the things that Smith talked about was being able to learn about versus learning from those who are culturally different than we are. And having understanding that when we learn from someone who's different than we are, it requires a relationship. When I consider the text and the information that was provided in chapter 5, I think about the Hofstede cultural theory because I think it fits well with the text. It's a theory that was developed as a result of observation and the interactions that took place between people who were within the same cultural group and those who were from different cultural groups. And it is based on psychology as well as cross-cultural communication. Communication includes verbal and nonverbal behaviors. How we treat others, how we interact with others, and how we take a genuine interest in learning about others reflects our desire to honor God and to honor God's people. And not only do that, but also to appreciate the culture and the cultural differences that are created by God. This is my summation of chapter 5, and I thank you for your time this evening.